Hello. So recently I was going through some of my stuff and I realized I haven't actually talked about what it is I'm actually working on. I've talked about how I'm a writer, I've talked about how I'm an author, I've talked about fun facts that I've come across while researching stuff for my books, but I haven't actually sat down and talked to you guys about what it is that I'm working on. So I thought that this would be a great opportunity to hop on here and talk about that. So let's get started. I'll get started with my most active projects, which currently there are three, which I consider my most active projects. So I'll start with those and then I'll move on to some of the others. But in total, I have about five projects that I'm working on right now. The first one is called the Pen Name Project, which you've probably seen. If you've seen any of my shorts, I have put some more videos about that on there. And hopefully by the time that that you are seeing this video, that blurb will be available on my website. The Pen Name Project, or PNP for short, is my contemporary rom-com that I've written for my pen name, which is Leigh Creek. A lot of the ones that I'll be talking about today are for my pen name. The second one that I have is the most active in terms of actually physically writing it, which is currently I'm calling it Project TF. It is a contemporary rom-com, which I can't say too terribly much on it yet because it is still in the first draft process. So I don't really have a blurb or anything like that that I can give you guys. But if you stay tuned, hopefully I will have that within the next couple of weeks coming up. As I mentioned, I'm setting goals for myself going forward and deadlines and that kind of thing. So that way I can actually get these books out in a timely fashion instead of it being years and years and years before it sees the light of day. So for this one, I currently have the first draft, which I'm hoping, cross your fingers for me, I'm hoping to have the first draft done by April 17th, I think is when I set my deadline for. Yeah, April 17th. So currently that's my deadline for the first draft, and then it'll be on to edits and story and all that kind of stuff. Because of these goals and all that, I have currently, after that particular deadline, I'm hoping sometime mid next year is when I'd like to get this book published, but again, we'll see. I currently have a beta reader slash critique partner S. It's kind of a complicated situation, but it works. Currently, we're working together and I'm sending them a couple of chapters at a time. They're giving me feedback, which, if I've learned anything with the process of writing and editing and with Tosca and with the pen name project and now Project TF, I've learned that I tend to do better when I have feedback a little bit earlier on in the process, because the problem that I had with the pen name project and why it's taken me like two almost 3 years to really get it finalized is because, well, pen name project had other issues besides this, but one of the big things is I didn't have feedback earlier on. So I would go through the whole book, and by the time I sent it to a beta reader for, story reasons, they'd look at it and they'd find a whole bunch of, issues and stuff like that. And because I didn't have it earlier on, I had to go back and do the whole thing over again. And that is a huge pain in the butt, which, again, there was other reasons that happened with pen name project, which included I didn't have an outline for that one, so I kind of pantsed it, so it made those problems even worse, which I'm hoping I've remedied by also having an outline for Project TF. But again, things happen, not everything's perfect, but you know my ultimate goal obviously then is I don't want to go through 10 different drafts just to get the story part of this correct. I want to tighten that up a lot more than I did for the pen name project. So with this one, having that feedback earlier on and being able to go back and be like, okay, well, there is a plot related issue in chapter 4. I can easily fix that before it continues on into the rest of the story, and then I have to start all over again. So keep your fingers crossed for me. The third one that I have is Project DDD, which is going to be the first book in a series of interconnected standalone small town romances. I'm currently outlining this first one. I have some plans for the second two, but I'm really focusing on the first, and that is because it's going to be based on a world that doesn't exist. I'm making it up, obviously. It's going to take a lot more world building and planning and stuff like that, especially because I have plans where it is standalone, but it's interconnected in the way that, like, the other characters in the story are going to get their own books in the future. And because of that, I obviously need a little bit more world building and planning and that kind of thing to make sure everything is squared away. I'm not gonna lie, as of recording this video, I'm still having a little bit of a hard time with the plot of the first one. And when I say that, I mean, I tend to, again, every writer has their process, has their way of creating stories and that kind of thing. Mine tends to be like I start with like an idea, a general idea or a vibe, and I can build a story around it. And this time around, I have characters I know that I want, I have events that I know that I want, and that kind of thing. But like building a plot around it and planning all this other stuff has been a little bit difficult. So I'm hoping going forward that that irons itself out a little bit more. And obviously, I'll talk more about it as those come along. But that's currently what's going on with Project DDD. I don't have an estimate for any kind of timeline for that one in particular, just because, again, it's based on the fact that it's going to be a series of books and the other two projects that I'm working on and some of the other stuff. So we'll just have to wait and see on that one. So I have two projects that are currently kind of on the back burner, one of which is going to be also under my pen name Leigh Creek, and the other will be under my regular name Elizabeth C. Cabrera. The romances and all of that are all going to be under Leigh Creek, just because that's why I wanted to have a pen name, is so that I could have more fun with the romances and not have it attached to some of the other projects. And I'll explain why here in a little bit. But for this particular project, it's going to be Project DDSNC, which will be my debut romantic fantasy under my pen name. Sort of like with Project DDD, because it's a fantasy, it's going to take even more planning and world building and all of that before I can really get into the meat of it. So it's going to be a little bit more of an undertaking. This project is actually one that I wrote a while ago, like I want to say a few years ago. I'd started it for what was it? I think it was for NaNoWriMo. And I wrote the whole first draft of it, looked at it, absolutely hated it. So I scrapped the whole thing. Now, other writers are going to tell you not to do that. I'm going to tell you not to do that because that's not always the best thing. But what I will do tell you to do, if you're if you're going to listen to me, scrap it for now. Don't completely get rid of it. Scrap it for now, because that's what I did with this one. I put it to the side basically, and I was like, okay, well, I like some of the ideas in here, but it was completely different genre. It was a completely different like just completely different. But there was like little key takeaway points and things that I really liked, that I was like, I don't want to completely give up on it. So I'm gonna shelve it for now, and then I'll come back to it. So I did that. I let it sit for a little while, and more recently I was sitting there and I was like, oh, I'm kind of feeling the itch to go back to that. So let me take a look. And then I've started to breathe a little bit new life into it. I kind of tweaked it. I turned it into a romantic fantasy, which it was not before. And I think it's going to turn out a lot better. I'm really excited about it, but because it's such an undertaking, it's still going to be on the back burner for a little bit. But I'm hoping that once some of these other ones get a little bit further along in the process and that I actually get them published, I can pick this one back up and actually put more effort into it. And the last one that I'll talk about is Project WICL, which is the only book that I currently have on my plate that is under my regular name. And it's going to be my debut murder mystery novel. Unlike some of the other projects that I have going on right now, this one is kind of the total opposite of some of those, which is why I'm putting it under my regular name and not my pen name. Because, like Tosca, which is not dark necessarily, but it has a lot more intense themes, this one also is going to be intense. It's a murder mystery, but it's not like a cute little like fluffy, murder mystery that you see, and it's not that. It's dark, it's intense, it's got a lot of stuff going on in it, and I'm really excited about it, but definitely not something I want to put under my pen name right now. This one, I actually also have a first draft that I've started, and I put it on pause. So yeah, going back to the pause thing, this is another project that I have on pause. And the reason for that is that because it is darker, it's more intense, it needs a little bit more planning, if that makes sense. And when I say planning, I don't necessarily mean like the actual plot, because I had the plot outlined. I had all of that ready to go. I started the first draft of it. I decided to put it on pause for a little bit just to work on some of the other projects from my pen name. But the real reason that I put it on pause is because it's a project that, because of how intense it's going to be, I need to have other fluffier things that I'm working on as well. I tended to get bogged down when I was starting to work on the first draft for this, and I don't really need that going on. My mental health could never. So I need some more fluffy things to be working on as well. So that way there's a little bit more of a balance. So hope with that is to start incorporating that back into my schedule here coming up, which I've already started to kind of plan that out in terms of when I want to resume writing the first draft for that. So hopefully I'll be juggling two works in progress at once with that one, and then we'll go from there. But right now, this is the only project on my plate that's under only my pen, not my pen name. So that's currently what all I'm working on right now. I've got 5 projects in total, 4 of which are going to be under my pen name, one of which is going to be under my regular name. 3 of them are currently active and in progress, and then the other 2 are kind of on pause until I can free up more time for them. Let me know if any of these projects interested you and if you want me to talk more about them or what other kinds of content you would like me to cover going forward. Until then, have a good one.